in relation to Covid-19 tonight. NPHET have recommended the highest level 5 restrictions for the entire country. It came in a letter sent to government tonight after the emergency team met in Dublin. It's expected that the three-party leaders in government will seek a meeting with the Chief Medical Officer, Tony Holohan, tomorrow to discuss this. More than 3,000 new cases of the virus have been confirmed here in the past week. There have been 364 confirmed cases of Covid-19 today. No further deaths were reported. In Northern Ireland, there were 462 new confirmed cases. One further death was reported there.
A lengthy meeting of the National Public Health Emergency Team ended this evening. The meeting was unscheduled and was chaired by the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Tony Holohan, who returned to work a day earlier than expected. All week, the number of new cases have been increasing, with officials saying there had been a significant escalation of the virus. The numbers caused concern that tighter restrictions could be on the way. Dublin and Donegal are already at level 3 and the rest of the country at level 2. Tonight, NPHET has recommended to government that the entire country is raised to level 5 restrictions. Level 5 restrictions. This would mean a return to the strictest of measures, where all non-essential businesses would be closed, people would be asked to stay at home and exercise within 5 kilometres from their home. There would be no visits between households, but schools and creches could remain open. Earlier, the Green Party leader, Eamon Ryan, had said he hoped government could avoid escalating restrictions.
And I think, yes, there's real concern. When you look at other countries, it is rising very fast. We do have to do the simple things, reduce the number of people we meet, avoid social contact. If we all do that, I think we can avoid going to level 4. Other countries can avoid going to level 3. And I hope Dublin can go back to level 2 and Donegal too.
It's expected the three-party leaders in government will seek a meeting with the Chief Medical Officer tomorrow to discuss this recommendation. Laura Hogan, RTE News.
Let's hear from our political correspondent, Micheál Lehane, who's at Government Buildings, and our Northern editor, Tony Gorman, who's in Belfast. And Micheál, to you first, and emphasising again that this is just, as of tonight, a recommendation. But NPHET wouldn't be making it, one would think, unless they felt it absolutely necessary. What would it look like if level 5 was imposed across the country?
Well, you're getting very close to what happened in the country last March and April. Essentially, people being urged to stay at home, and you've only essential retail stores opened, and then exercising only within 5 kilometres of a person's home as well. I suppose the difference this time would be that, on paper at least, schools would be staying open. But I think already, if this were to come to pass, there's a sense that would that be met with some reluctance by teachers if there was essentially almost a shutdown of the country, and yet schools would continue on. Those are the kind of considerations that I think politicians in government are already beginning to think about as they look to that meeting with the Chief Medical Officer tomorrow.
Yes, and bearing that in mind, they received this letter tonight following this unscheduled NPHET meeting. What do you think government will do?
Ray, I think it's really hard to sum up the level of shock and surprise within government buildings tonight. That's my clear sense. There is a view there that people aren't ready to make this leap so quickly, that no other country, maybe with the exception of Israel, but it's pointed out the situation there was worse, has taken this particular approach so swiftly. So I think while there had been an expectation that perhaps the rest of the country could be moving up to level 3, no one in government anticipated that. So that makes that meeting tomorrow between the party leaders and Tony Holohan significant indeed. No planned cabinet meeting tomorrow as things stand. But what you will have is the Covid-19 Oversight Committee, and that essentially is the country's top civil servants. They will begin to look at this recommendation in detail, and it's there that the practicalities of it, as it's described to me, will be looked at to see if this is in any way workable. But I think you can say that as of now, there is strong political resistance, initially at least, to what has been proposed.
And Tommy, in Belfast, a surge in cases too in Northern Ireland this past week. Will authorities there be observing developments in the Republic as they mull over what their next move will be?
Ray, there's a very serious and a very obvious point to be made here. If you look at the numbers of infections north and south, the numbers here are actually higher on straightforward comparisons. But then you take into account the population structure, and you see the infection rates here, just on today alone, they're 3 times higher than south of the border. The Northern Ireland administration had planned to implement some restrictions in the Donegal and Strabane areas, nowhere near as the level 5 kind of restrictions you're talking about for the entire Republic. So the Northern Ireland administration has a real problem because it doesn't have the funds, it doesn't have the ability to provide finance for businesses that are going to close. As with the South, the priority here is to try to keep schools open at all costs, even if that involves closing businesses. But this administration doesn't have the money to fund compensation packages. Now, maybe down south they're writing IOUs rather than cheques, but they don't have that ability here in Stormont. So you're going to see huge pressure from Northern Ireland on Boris Johnson that because we're part of an island where there's a huge problem, we need extra finance. But Northern Ireland's administration will not feel minded to go to the equivalent of level 5 unless it has the funding to provide compensation. And there you're going to have a huge disparity in measures north and south on an island with the very poorest border. Ray.
Tommy Gorman, Micheál Lehane, thank you. There are fears a new clampdown on travel will